Hey guys, welcome to Unscripted with Marshall Brown and Brandon Dodd, the ministers at Flagstone Church. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to be walking through meaningful community and how we can build meaningful community. So we're going to be walking through some biology from some pastors. So know that we're not quite equipped to be able to do all of that, but man, we've got some cool sources that we're going to be pulling from, and how ultimately that is how we're designed for connection, designed for meaningful community. So sit back. Get ready to go.
Yeah. Here we go with Unscripted.
Let's get unscripted.
Yeah.
So we've been talking for the past 2 weeks or so about meaningful community. So far, we've talked about how we're biologically designed for connection. Mm-hmm. So cool things. God set us up to where we are built to be together.
Right.
And even whenever we feel like we need loneliness and those kinds of things, find ourselves always, even if we want to be alone, we want to be alone
with other people. Be alone.
Which is fine. Last week we talked about, what do healthy friendships look like and what's kind of the base of those things, but then we nuanced that conversation with pros and cons of like online friendships and good things and bad things about those things. And I felt like that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Us being able to really kind of get to the heart of those things and ultimately being like, man, both are beneficial and can be beneficial for different people, but there's got to be this in-person aspect.
For sure, in like
something
dating relationships and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's, I don't want to rehash everything we talked about last week, but I think there is a certain level of even in friendships, like how deep do you want that friendship to go? There has to be some level of intimacy, if I can use that word. Like we're actually here together. I'm not putting up a front. This is actually me. This is everything. All the things that I like about myself and all the things that I wish were different. And I think the deeper that you want that friendship to go, at some point you have to be, in person. Yeah. But that's not to be dismissive of those online relationships either.
Yeah, and the value that those can bring to everyday life. So too. So today we're going to talk about why does it feel like it's so difficult for me to make friends as an adult?
Yeah.
And it just feels like that's something that happens whether you're graduated high school and went straight into the workforce, or you did some stints in college and then went into the workforce, or whatever that may be. For some reason, it feels like that there's like what's happened between kindergarten and now, to where you could have a million little friends running around on the playground, but now it feels like deep, meaningful friendships are few and far between, and it feels like that even just starting them is really difficult too. So I know we talked about at least a little bit of this last week of some of my first friendships surrounded by dirt.
You and your dirt eating buddies.
Yeah. And I was just like, I was a dirt eater. And so I was like, common ground, actual common ground. And I don't know exactly, but these are like, we're meeting on the playground and I'm best friends with those kids all the time. I don't feel like you're the similar. Yeah.
I mean, at least in elementary school, it didn't seem like it took quite as much effort. Now there are kids, let's be honest, there's elementary school kids that still struggle. Like there's social awkwardness and stuff where they struggle with that. But even, think about preschool kids. I mean, you go to a playground, like go to City Park or playground, it does, like your kids. Yeah. I remember my kids being that age, but they can run up holding hands with some total stranger's kid, like, this is my new best friend. Like, really?
And as a parent, like, wait, whoa, where's your
what's
mom?
your new best friend's name? I don't know. And then go running off. But it's
perfectly fine.
Yeah. There's that sense of, we like having fun together, so we are now friends, and we're going to be friends forever. And
they'll say words like best friends.
Yeah. But even in elementary school, it didn't seem like it was that hard. Same kind of, you're talking about the common ground, but we like the same recess equipment, or our team won during PE or whatever, and like it just, even if you get assigned to, certain tables in the cafeteria or something, there's still, you find those, it's still a sense of commonality. Like you weren't best friends with everybody, but you found the people that you had most in common with, and like, okay, these are my friends now. And it didn't take a whole lot of, let me get to know you a little bit before I let you into my bubble,
Yeah, because that's adult friendships now, right? Of like, I know a lot of people, but like for us to be considered friends, I don't know what that, there's actually a Bluey episode.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I'm like, I didn't think about this till right now. There's a Bluey episode where Bluey and her dad, they go to the park, and there's another dad and with another little girl or a little boy or something like that. And she's like, they hang out twice because it's like early in the morning before breakfast. They'll go to the park and then come back. And she's like, "Are you friends?" And he's like, well, I mean, I just maybe like eat your breakfast." But what's funny is that like I feel like that's friendships nowadays. And I watch my 5-year-old son and I watch my 7-year-old daughter, and it just there's an ease to it.
But I bet it's even a little bit different. I'm sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but I think even with your 5-year-old and your 7-year-old, there's probably a little bit more ease that he has. Part of his personality stuff too, because let's be honest, your 5-year-old can be friends with a wall if he wants to. Like he's just that positive and that much of a bundle of energy. And but still, like I feel like every year you get a little bit more guarded. And like I remember being in elementary school, we moved into a new neighborhood when I was in like 2nd grade, and my sister was 3 years older than me. And I'm just out riding my bike in this new neighborhood, and there's a kid, riding his bike in his driveway. And I remember riding up, and he's riding around like, "You want to ride bikes?" Which we already were, but like, what else are you gonna say?
You ride bikes together.
Ride bikes, and like, yeah. And then we ride around for, I don't know, what to me seemed like all day. It's probably like 10 or 15 minutes. And like, "Hey, you want to be friends?" Okay. And that was it. And then coming back to my house, and I did that with like 2 or 3 kids in the neighborhood. And then coming back to my house, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm friends with, his name was Jack. This other girl was, Angie or something like that." There's these kids in the neighborhood. And my sister, who's just 3 years older than me, was like, "How do you do that?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "What do you mean, how to do that?" I remember having this conversation even as a little kid. It's still in my mind. I'm like, I just asked them. Like, but already her, I'm in 2nd grade, she's in 5th grade. There was already this, for her, more of a struggle of, I can't just walk up to somebody and like, "Hey, we're friends now." But there had been that time, I think.
Yeah.
It just wasn't there anymore. Yeah.
I wonder I think maybe you become more conscious of yourself.
Maybe so.
Maybe you like, "Oh, I do like these things and this person doesn't like those things," but those things aren't as present. I think the friendships that my 5-year-old son has are as true and as deep as they possibly could be for a 5-year-old, and completely appropriate and stuff too. And then, like you said, the difference between a 2nd grader and a 5th grader, like there's, I don't know, you become more aware of others or more aware of yourself. I wonder what that is.
Part of it has to be like personality stuff,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
You start really getting into your introverts and extroverts, and where I get my energy from, and where I get my sense of belonging from, and all that kind of stuff. So that has to be part of it, just your DNA. But I think, I know you got some other reasons, but I think part of it is just, could it be just like for lack of a better word, just trust. Like, the more time you spend on this earth, the more experiences you have where people do treat you bad, let you down, lie to you, gossip about you, you know, all the things that we are leery of, in other people, especially when it comes to friendships, and are cautious of, allowing that relationship to take place. The reason we become more leery of it is because we experience it more often. You know what I'm saying? And like you're more trusting as a younger kid because you haven't experienced people, as much at least, mistreating you or abusing that friendship, that relationship in some way. But the more time you spend on this earth, the more often those experiences are going to take place, even from elementary kids and then like into junior high and then high school. And you know what I'm saying? Just, I feel like it's a part of it is just a trust thing. And when we talk about even adult friendships, why is it hard now as an adult? Hard is not the right word, but more difficult to build those relationships. And I think the part of it is just like, man, do I fully trust this person? I don't know what, that's what we say. I don't know this person. Well, how much do you have to know? A lot more than I do. I don't.
And where's the line? To Bluey's thing. When are we friends?
Yeah.
And do you have to be like, hey, so like we're
friends now.
We're friends. We're friends now. Because you don't want to say that. That's weird. Yeah. Right? That's weird.
Yeah. That's totally weird.
Say like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe that's like defining the relationship right now.
No, when I was in college, I wasn't like talking to my roommate going, hey, we're friends now, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
You know,
Why would
course
stop? Maybe we're not friends. Don't ask
Yeah.
me that question. Like,
no, we're not actually.
yeah. Well,
Especially not now.
so going from those relationships, I'm right now. I'm in the early stages of a friendship with a dad from pre-K, right?
Okay.
So I'm dropping my son off at pre-K, and there's another dad that has a son that's dropping his son off at pre-K. And now we're in the early stages, and what's funny is that we've found common ground. So we're both 30. We both found common ground, and like our very first conversation was like, man, making new meaningful friendships just sucks. Like, it just sucks.
That was your first conversation?
Yeah. Because okay, I'm gonna tell you why. So we established the common ground
I'm
first.
just saying that sounds awkward to me right now.
It is.
Hello, total stranger.
but-
I struggle making friends. Do you?
Do you also? Let us also struggle making friends together. Yes.
I know
wasn't
that's not
that
how it went. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. But that was the common ground of like, we both have sons that are the same age in the same class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was the one that was the initiator. I said, hey man, like, I know this is weird, but my son has like lots and lots of friends that are girls. Our immediate community there's like girls filled with it and stuff like that. And like, I know that my son talks about your son all the time. Your son's this person, right? Yes. And so like, I don't know, like if we can get together to have a play date, like our sons get together and those kinds of things. I think that would be cool and beneficial for my son. And like, maybe like if you feel more comfortable, we could get together and stuff like that, just to like, establish that relationship. And so he was like, yeah, man, like we moved here, X number of years ago, not very long. And that's when he was like, it's hard. It's hard making new friends. And I was like, yes, like it is hard making new friends. And so that was like the connection of like, we both realized that this is hard. Okay, cool. Maybe we can make a connection too. And what's cool is that it's been fun watching that blossom and seeing. So I was just reading some stuff yesterday of like, what are the couple of things, and I've got 3. So it just seems like today, like, what is it that makes difficult, or what is it that makes deep friendships so uncommon and challenging? And it appears that there's really 3 things: that there's busyness,
right,
technology, and shallow roots.
Okay.
So you know how the Bible says that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken when talking about friendship?
Right.
I think that these things, it's like the negative. It's like these are the 3, like this is the cord of 3 strands that makes a barrier. And so like busyness of life can often crowd out important friendships, pushing them to the side of like, hey, we'll get together. I'm so sorry this week got crazy. We'll get together next week.
Yeah.
And technology promises that kind of connection. But most of the time it ends up getting in the way, because here you and I are having a conversation and I get a text or I get a notification and I'm immediately transported into a different space.
Yeah. Or,
right
I
here.
mean, if you are sitting at a park watching your kids play and somebody else watching their kids play, I mean, besides watching your kids play, what are you doing?
You're on your phone, man.
Like, we're down like this the whole time.
To avoid the potential awkwardness of talking with other parents or other people, because that's weird.
Right.
And the last thing of the ease of having shallow roots. That's the number 3. The ease of having shallow roots. Like, because I've had so many great friendships in the past that I've sunk deep roots into, it prevents me from experiencing friendship now, because why would I do that if I already have things from the past?
Yeah.
And I still have those relationships. What's the point of like making new ones?
Yeah.
So busyness, technology, and shallow roots.
Yeah.
Do you think that, number 1, are there more, or do you think that?
I mean, there's probably more, but with what you talked about, I mean, busyness, that's kind of a broad term, because we can get busy doing a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It's not just about job stuff. I mean, I got family stuff. And I think even that, you could label it business or just ultimately lack of time together, or time with other people. I mean, I think even, when I first, you may be this way too. When I first got out of college a long time ago, I was the one that kind of kept tabs on everybody that was in my friendship group, when we were in college together.
It's like,
so
I would be the glue.
Yeah. And, I'd be the one to make phone calls or emails or eventually, texting and stuff when everybody got cell phones. That's how long ago this was. But I was kind of the then I talked to somebody else and like, oh yeah, I talked to so-and-so. Oh, how's he doing? And I just kind of was the one that kind of updated a lot of information. But then just slowly but surely, I got focused on other things. I'm coaching my kids in ball games. I'm doing church stuff. I did, whatever, and just kind of. It wasn't even. I mean, I guess it's busyness, but it just was. I just didn't devote the time to it anymore. So ultimately, time I think is a big issue as far as adult friendships. So like, I can fill my time with a lot of other things besides spending time with this person.
Yeah.
And so therefore, and not in a that sounds like almost mean, like, hey, this is more important to me than you are. But I have to. There are so many things that are battling for my time that I inadvertently drop my friendships in priority level.
Yeah. Well, I wonder too, because at least for me, and I feel like the majority of people that would be, in the same space, it's like, well, I've got my family. I'm going to spend my time with my family, and the time that I'm not with my family, I'm at my job.
Yeah.
I'm working on my career and those kinds of things. And so any of that extra time is very valuable and very coveted.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I wonder, this is just an honest opinion. It's unscripted stuff. Where do you put the value? Because obviously you have to have family time and you have to have job. And so is friendship almost a lesser way to spend time? Is friendship, I just wonder.
I think it definitely,
should it be
probably
tertiary compared to those two?
Subconsciously drops in our in our list of priorities for sure. Mm-hmm. Except maybe those one or two people, like, I don't want to lose this, relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, which honestly makes it more difficult to make new friends as an adult,
Yeah.
Because we're both going through that.
Yeah. We both have,
like, even if I'm sitting there going, man, I need more adult friendships. Well, awesome. But maybe that person that I want to be friends with doesn't feel like they need more friendships, because they got a ton of stuff on their plate already.
They're strapped. I feel an immense pressure for that because, like, at least with me, I've got three kids under 8. I barely have time to sleep, much less have time to invest in valuable friendships. There was a guy that I was reading. Oh man, I wish I had brought his book so I could quote him. That's fine. But he was talking about busyness and how that can be a really big, something that can stop us and make it difficult to have meaningful, community. And he was like, yeah, I met one guy one time that was like, yeah, I don't have time for friends. And it wasn't in an antagonistic way that you're talking about of like, I'm better than friends. Like I can do things, but it's an honest plea of like a tired dad of like, I don't have time for friends.
Yeah.
And something that this author was talking about, he was like, yeah, like I totally understand that you've got your family and you've got your career and you've got your friends. And so if you're going to drop one, it seems like you would drop friends. And then the author was, he has a very, very high view of friendship. But he said, man, it'd be like saying, well, food and air are really, really, really important. And because I'm focused on those things, I'm going to not like drink water.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man. Like, and so that sounds a little abrasive. What do you like? Do you think that friendship is that like food and air are pretty important, but so is water?
I think we've already determined that. I think even just the first week we were talking, like, this is something that you have to have. We're designed for relationships. And you can even if you remove scripture from it, if you wanted to, you talk to psychologists and stuff, and they'll, like, if you got somebody just completely stranded and alone, or we talk about like people in prison, and isolated stuff, it's psychologically and emotionally damaging. Yeah. So if that's the case, then you need some kind of relationships. You need some kind of friendships, in your life. You need it, like, as part of, is it overstating it to say it's part of survival? I don't think so. Like,
according to Maslow, not so much.
Yeah. So I think time is an issue, but man, look at, I don't want to belabor the point, but you think about like how important it was for Jesus. Let's Jesus do the thing for a minute. He's got his 12 apostles, and there was even times when they were doing a whole bunch of good stuff. Like, they were going out and preaching, performing miracles, and coming back to Jesus, and he's going out
and
preaching, performing miracles, and they had a lot of things. Yeah. Begging for their time and their focus. There was always a crowd around. So what did Jesus do? Like, as there's multiple times in Scripture where Jesus is like, let's us go off by ourselves.
Yeah.
Why? Because is it just because he wanted to teach them more stuff? I mean, that's part of it, but I think part of it is like, let's have some time together just as friends, man. We have all these other things that are consuming our time. Let's make sure we're spending time together.
Yeah, that's one thing that I like about The Chosen is that it really paints the humanness of Jesus really well. Of like, he just cuts up with his buddies. He's laughing like they go and like splash in the Jordan River and in the Sea of Galilee and stuff because he's just a 30-year-old guy.
Yeah.
That's just trying to hang out with his friends, and he's on mission, and they too are on mission. He's preparing them for the mission and all that, but he's human,
right?
And he needs those relationships too.
Yeah.
I know that later on, like so after he had spent 3 years with his guys, I mean, he tells them, "Hey, listen, man, greater love has no more than this, that one would lay his life down for his friends." And so he's like, "Listen, what I'm about to do is the greatest form of friendship."
Yeah.
And he couldn't do that if he hadn't already spent so much time trying to sink deep roots.
Yeah, but even in that same chapter, in John chapter 13, he goes on right after that and goes, "Hey, just in case you didn't know, I call you my friends."
He establishes that. Like,
we are
close.
Buddies. Yeah.
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 And so, man, okay, so let's just get really practical then. I don't have any of this like even thought out or anything like that. Whenever it comes to busyness, I almost wonder that if it's a conscious decision. I've been told that where you spend your time is where your values are.
Sure.
And so obviously if you're at your job for 8 hours, 12 hours a day or something like that, that makes sense. And your family, that makes sense too.
Mm-hmm.
But even in the times whenever we're lazy busy, we're on our phones or we're playing video games or
watching
whatever
a ball
it may
game
be.
or something.
Yeah, watching a ball game, mowing the lawn, those kinds of things, lazy busy. But if friendship is really important for us, how much effort are we really spending in actually trying to get together or actually trying to, do that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question that we have to ask ourselves. But I think also you have to be intentional about it too. Like you have to be intentional about getting a hold of somebody and saying, "Hey, let's go get dinner. Let's go get coffee. Let's go take a bike ride." I think it is easier when you're a kid because there isn't like, it's either school or playing. Like
mom's taking you to all of those things.
Right. But you're around those people, those friendships, in those spaces. I think when it gets to adulthood, you have to carve out time. You have to maybe even schedule it because it won't happen otherwise.
Yeah.
It happens less naturally, I guess, when we get into adulthood, especially our business. But I think it should be a priority though.
Can I confess something to you and
For
to
sure.
the rest of the world and all that?
Absolutely.
If I say, "Yeah, man, like we should totally get together. Let's schedule something for next month." If we don't schedule something right then and put it on the calendar for a date and time and a place, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
It ain't happening.
But there's also something, and I don't know why this is. I really don't have an answer for this, but I acknowledge that it's true. And but maybe it's an age thing where maybe it is just the energy level. You're tired. Maybe it's laziness. I don't know what it is, but there's sometimes where people are like, "Hey, you want to get together?" You're like, oh. Somebody texts you and
like a
like,
chore.
"Hey, you want to get, dinner tomorrow night?" You're like, oh man, I've got to get ready, and I've got, what I'm saying? And I mean, I'm totally, I'm stealing Nate Bargatze's comedy thing, but you've seen him talking about like in his 20s, like people are like, "You want to do something?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to do something. I'll do whatever you want me to do." And
I don't even know where we're going.
It.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. He's like,
we're
"I'll
just
set
going.
my apartment on fire. What do you want to do?"
Yeah, we're just going.
And then 30s, he's like, who else is going?
Yeah, some more questions.
How late? How loud is it? I'll drive myself. And then 40s, you're like, "No, I don't want to go.
No,
I'm mad that you even asked."
I'm not going. You can't make me.
Yeah. So maybe it's energy level, maybe it's time of life. I don't know what it is, but I think we have to carve out time. So
if we're wanting meaningful, which is what we're talking about next week, is like how can we actually cultivate and like fertilize good friendships, make them. I think that's a part of it.
Yeah.
The second thing was technology, which you could have the antithesis of like actually technology brings us closer. It's kind of something that we talked about last week.
Mm-hmm. It can. Mm-hmm. It can also drive us further apart.
Yeah. I mean, how many times I hate it, but I know that I do it. I hate it, but I know that I do it. If we're having an intentional conversation, maybe not even something that I've necessarily said, like, I'm going to be present right now in this moment, because it happens. It's muscle memory. Your phone buzzes, or you get the phantom buzz.
Yeah.
Man, that was happening to
you
me a
feel
couple
that
days ago.
vibration. You're like, oh,
You're like, oh, it's there, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh. Which, come to find out, reading some science stuff behind that's a form of addiction. Where you're like, oh yeah,
yeah.
I'm just
But it's like Pavlov's dog, man. As soon as you feel that buzz, you just have to
oh,
see
get it out.
that's important.
Yeah, even if you know that the buzz is literally just saying, hey, you need to turn
Yeah.
your volume down. I get that.
Dude, it happened yesterday when you, me, and our friend Mike were eating lunch together, and my phone ding, and I'm like, I'm mid conversation, and as I'm talking, I'm like, let me,
Because it could be
and then I
important.
come back.
So the scary part of that is that you, in trying to develop my phone just buzzed right now if you've never heard that, in trying to form deep connections and stuff, not just with friends, I mean with family and people that are important, it is so easy to check out almost instantaneously
Right.
and it may not even necessarily be somebody on the other side of the phone, like a text or a DM or something like that, or a FaceTime call. It's just like a Sports Center update.
Yeah.
Hold on a sec. And all of a sudden we could have been in this, good conversation, but then it stops. And then what's interesting too, is that I find whenever that happens, I see this happen all the time at the office, and I'm sure many people feel the same way. You're in mid conversation with somebody, and then you have to take a quick call.
Yeah.
30 seconds. Whatever conversation that's over.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we've both forgotten what
Right.
we were talking about, and we're moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And not to say that that's bad. I'm just like, we realize that
Acknowledging it.
happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of, where this hit hard, at least for me, I mean, obviously it separates friendships and stuff, and it's harder to dive in whenever you're being pulled in lots of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of convicted about this with like my family and stuff too. How many times, I do it all the time. How many times is my daughter talking to me or my son is talking to me, and they're like physically like pulling on me, and I'm right here, I'm finishing a text or
Yeah.
and I'm like, hey, hold on. And it's emails and stuff like that. And one of my favorite Christian poets, he said, how many of my daughter's hugs have I not replied to? I was like, oh,
Stab me in
ow.
the heart, man.
Yeah. And then, Morgan and I, we've got almost a check system of like, hey, like here,
Mm-hmm.
like here, be present here. And so that's something that I feel like gets in the way. And I wish it didn't.
For sure. There's the benefit of technology is like you can stay connected with people that you are friends with, and especially if you move away or, whatever. Because now it's not even just texting, FaceTime and all that kind of stuff. Like you can see them. Like I can have an actual interaction with you as if we're in the same room together. That's awesome. That's great. But to your point, like I can bury my face in my screen.
Yeah.
For, so deeply and for so long that I miss out on having actual connections with other people.
And I feel like you only notice it whenever you're trying to notice it.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you have ears, let them hear. Those who have eyes, let them see and stuff. Of like, I feel like this happens all the time in offices. Of you got a break room and people are eating lunch and stuff like that. You got 5 or 6 people eating lunch. Let's say you got 6 people and 5 of them are on their phones, and you've got one person that's just staring at their food.
Yeah.
I got low battery. We can make this happen. Like that person that's not on their phone is at the table with them, and yet she is eating alone.
Right.
Yeah.
And
like, I think it's just something that we don't need to beat ourselves up on. I do think it's something that
have an awareness of.
Yeah, and it's almost like a pacifier. I mean, honestly, let's just if we're gonna Jesus juke this and stuff too, let's take it to the deepest level of that. One of the things that Satan is trying to do for us is to isolate us and keep us away from other people. And where our phones can be immense blessings, they can also be this thing that's like, like you've got important things that you've got to do. And so you find yourself isolated because you consistently find yourself on your phone and not with other people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really dark and very strategic stuff to trying to keep us separated.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that our phones are evil or anything like that, but like if we're not looking at it, we can get sucked in.
Yeah. Well, it's like anything else. The phone technology is neutral. It's what we choose to do with it. It's what we choose to do with it, and how much we allow it to dominate our hearts.
It's a good servant, but we're bad masters.
Yeah. Jesus talked in Matthew chapter 6, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is.
Ooh.
Like what do I spend the most time devoted to and the most focus on? That's where my heart actually is. And if it's not my friendships, well, they're going to suffer because of it.
Yeah. Well, just like you said, going back to the cord of three strands not easily broken. I mean, that's in Ecclesiastes, and he's like, "Hey, man, pity the man." Oh, you didn't say pity. What was the word that you used last time? Like,
I guess it was.
I mean,
pity,
it's sad.
yeah.
I feel like pity's like pity the man that falls and has no.
Mr. T.
Pity the man.
Yeah, but that's what he says. Pity the man who falls and has no one to help him up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're like, you can keep warm if you're sleeping with somebody else. Like if you're like you can keep warm, and if there's a battle that's happening, and you can be back to back with somebody else, that you can fight your battles and stuff like that. And we may not realize how much of a chasm that our technology is creating between us and our friends.
Right.
And so we need to re-engage and not be disengaged with those things.
Yeah.
Last thing that I could think of that I was thinking of more is the shallow roots. What do I mean by that? Like, I'll just give you a quick synopsis, because you're telling me about your friends of, making Jack and Angie and those kinds of things.
Yes.
There's one big move that I made as a kid in 7th grade, and I had these great friendships that were great for me as a preteen, stuff like that. And then I moved, and then I developed really, really good and deep friendships with other people that were deeper than those friendships. And then I started college, and so for 4 years I developed some of the deepest relationships I had ever had before. These people were there for me through thick and thin. As I went through really, really tough stuff, they were there. As we went through really, really good stuff, we were there. These are people that were in my wedding. I was in their weddings. Like, we had this friend group that we were tight, and we talked about real stuff. Like, we talked about life. Like, we were not satisfied, and we didn't have this conversation. As friends, we're not going to be satisfied with surface level stuff.
Right.
But it was just there, and it was so good. And then I moved from college here, and I feel like everybody feels this at some point. Moved from college here, and there's this thought of like, man, I have all of those deep friendships and deep roots. So do I need more?
Yeah.
Like, why bother?
Yeah.
Why bother with something like that?
Yeah.
And then I feel like this is where, a lot of people in Northwest Arkansas, and our jobs can be so transient of like, I'm in this company, but I'm moving internally so often. And so like, I make relationships with you, but how long am I going to be here? Or like, I don't even know how long I'm going to live here. And so why really try and sink deep roots into these friendships if I'm just going to end up in Boston in a year? I'm not sure. And so what we settle for is shallow roots. And I think that's difficult, because I understand. I don't know about you. I understand in that, like, yeah, I put a lot of effort into these other relationships and these good friendships that I have, and I can still have them because of the digital connection that we have. But whenever it comes to the awkwardness, just like I had with my friend that's a preschool dad, of like, this is tough, right? It is tough to be like, let's go grab lunch and have this like dating phase,
Right?
Where, who are you, man? Like, what's your values? And to start fresh, sometimes it feels like that's more effort than you need to put in.
But I think it's also, I think the shallow roots is a byproduct. I'm not trying to challenge it. I think it's a byproduct of what we've already talked about, with the busyness and the trust and stuff. The reason that you had those deeper roots with those guys, because you spent a whole lot of time with them.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in an apartment with those guys. You're in the same dorms. You're on the same teams. You're around them all the time. And so, because of our busyness and our jobs, and like it becomes more difficult. I'll throw Christy under the bus here. My wife, Christy, she had this close set of friends in high school, and they're still close. Like, when they get together, they don't get together that often, but when they do get together, they just pick up right where they left off and stuff, because of the connection they had, when they were in high school. And then, they all went to college together, so they stayed friends through college. But then when she got up here, it was difficult, because she didn't have, like you're talking about, I don't have that group anymore. And how do I initiate that with people up here? And she struggled for a long time.
Yeah, don't even know if you want to do it.
Well, she struggled just even find, like, and when you're comparing it too. Yeah. I had these deep friendships, and these people, I'm not as, it does feel surface level. But then some of her closest friends up here now in Northwest Arkansas are people that had kids the same time that we did. So they got together as
life
moms
experiences.
Yeah. So they ended up spending time together. Yeah. At the playgrounds and at church, and teaching Bible classes at church, and all that kind of stuff. So it created, it just kind of happenstance, but all that time together, and not having necessarily technology, they're actually talking with each other and like sharing like this is what's going on with my family and this is how I'm trying to raise my kids and what about you and like all that. Force is a strong word, but it created the deeper roots because of that time together. So I'm saying, even when you talk about shallow roots, I think the shallow roots come from busyness and all these other factors that we talked about. It's just a byproduct of that. I either choose not to get deeper roots because I know I'm not going to be on this team for very long, around these people for very long, or it just kind of happens that way because we haven't spent time together. Because you see in the youth group, but even in your own personal life, the people that you're closer to here at church are people who you've been out of Green Valley Bible Camp with, or gone to Wilderness Trek with, or now you're establishing deeper friendships with people who got kids your age, and you're going to, the park together and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I think the roots part is a byproduct of these other things that we talked about.
And I think it's a decision to say, you know what, I will sink some roots. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an active decision.
Because that's where you get into the whole trust and the vulnerability. I'm going to let my guard down a little bit, and I'm going to let this person see the real me. and we get a lot more guarded about that as adults because we've probably been burned before.
Yeah.
Or we've seen other people get mistreated in their friendships and stuff. And so we want to be really cautious about that. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't come as easy as it does maybe for younger kids.
Yeah. But just because it was easier, the difficulty does not mean, if it's difficult, I'm just not going to do it. The difficulty can, just like you said, I'm assuming some of those friendships that Christy has right now are even deeper than the ones that she may have had in the past, because she was doing life and has been doing life with those people for years.
But also, again, I think that's the biggest thing about when you have deeper friendships, and we need to wrap up, and this is kind of my, it's the kind of one of the biggest things about that's easier for kids than it is adults, is taking off the veneer, taking off the makeup, and just being real and genuine, which is what God calls us to do. I go back to Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25 all the time, where Paul says we need to put off falsehood and speak truthfully to our neighbors. And that sounds like, don't tell a lie and be truthful. But he's really talking about genuineness. Mm-hmm. Don't be fake. And man, we do it all the time. We like online, in person. There's like, I will let you get to know me to a certain point, but then I'm gonna put this image of myself up that I want you to see. I'm not gonna let you see the real me. But at some point, if we want those deeper relationships, we have to be willing to take the cover off and go, okay, here's the flaws too. And are you okay with that? Are we okay with being that for each other?
And so as a precursor for next week, because that's what so we've got the difficulties of, okay, you know what, it's hard to do some of these things, and it feels difficult to make these meaningful connections, but it's worth it in the end. And so what does that actually look like? Like, how can we cultivate those friendships and make them something that's worthwhile, and something where, okay, how do I take a friendship from the surface shallow level friendships? How do I begin to sink roots deeper into those things? And I think that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Awesome. Let's do that next week then.
Cool.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll
Appreciate
see you next time.